Hello, everybody. Welcome to Scene Snob's Three Geeks collaboration interview. We are joined today by Tom McLoughlin. How are you doing today?
Does this make me the third geek here?
Yeah, for the night you are. Absolutely.
That's great. I will embrace that.
You're a lot cooler than these two geeks up here, though. You've done cooler things.
Well, I'm certainly much older. There's no question about that. But COVID didn't get to me. So if COVID didn't get to me, then I'm doing okay.
That's good. That's good that COVID didn't get to you. I'm going to start somewhere you wouldn't expect, probably, but you were in Critters 2.
Oh,
how do you go about getting that role?
That comes with being friends with Mick. Mick and I have been friends since 1982, maybe. I did a screening of One Dark Night at USC, and he was at the screening, and he came up afterwards and said how much he loved the movie, and he's working towards being a director himself, and we just created a bond. And he's been so helpful in so many different jobs I've had over the years, doing Amazing Stories, The Others, obviously part of the Masters of Horror, and then Critters, it was like, I've been using directors doing cameos, so I'd love to have you do it. So that's how that happened.
Critters is one of my favorite series of all time. It's so good. I was looking at your IMDb and I'm like, that's so cool. He was in Critters, but
especially such a chaotic scene in Critters too. That whole church scene is just mayhem.
Yeah, really.
And I have to say, I didn't know this because we were doing our research, and you were the Jabberwocky in the Alice in Wonderland TV movie, and that is the only terrifying image I remember from that movie.
I was about to say, how come you're not mentioning the Jabberwocky? Because that comes up just out of left field so many times. Like, I'm at these conventions and signing all this Friday the 13th shit, and then somebody comes up with a Jabberwocky picture and said, how much that scared me when I was a kid. And I thought, God, that didn't seem like it was that scary at all. And of course, when you're doing it, and the only reason I did it is because there was a chance to meet Ringo and all these stars that were doing that thing. And I thought, all right, I'll get into a suit and do the gig. It was a crazy show.
Well, like Mick, your buddy, you did a Stephen King adaptation. One of my favorite Stephen King adaptations, which is Sometimes They Come Back. I rented that movie so many times because my grandmother did not like cussing in her house, and there was no F words in that movie. So I rented it every time I went there because it's the only horror movie I knew that didn't have any cussing, and one that was legitimately terrifying.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we were making it, and this was crazy as a director to try to do this. We were making it for Scope, CinemaScope in Europe. So it had we had to watch the composition, and at the same time, it was going to be a CBS Stephen King movie. So, everything was the TV square. So it constantly had to keep checking the frame to see if you're losing something, one way or the other on one of the framings. And so as a result, obviously, most of the kills and things were done in a way that, I pushed it a little bit, but if they needed to cut it back, they could, and not sacrifice too much. And I think there was only one shot in the television version where the guys throw his, what's his name, Chip, throw his head out the window, and you see it kind of bounce on the bridge and go over. That's the only thing I remember actually, them taking out.
Well, for Sometimes They Come Back, it being a Stephen King adaptation, and stepping into that role, like, what's that like? Because I know, only so many directors have done it. Mick Garris being one of them, of course, but like stepping into that and taking over a Stephen King entity, there's one he hates for sure.
Yeah, we all know that. Yeah.
How did you feel? Like, any type of pressure was there to like take this on, or?
Well, it kind of was one of those things that, so many Stephen King movies were getting made, and I read this script and it wasn't really great, and then I went back and read the short story and went, there's more that can be done with this. And luckily, Dino De Laurentiis, who had the rights to it, agreed with me. And, we found another writer whose name just went out of my head. Shit, I'll think of it. And he and I kind of worked up the stronger family element to it, and the scarier kinds of kid stuff, when you're a kid, and the stuff that was scary to you, and tried to interlace that through. But the big thing that happened for me is that right before I did it, as I was leaving Los Angeles, my daughter had just been born. My father had just died. Mick and I had 40 shows that we were, having to get directors and writers for. She-Wolf of London and They Came from Outer Space. And I was directing like a 5-camera show for Showtime for my best friend Stephen Banks called Home Entertainment Center. And all of that was happening on top of each other. And then I was off to Kansas to start this thing. So I was like a mess and sort of on auto control, through the whole process. But as a result, there's just a lot of very personal things that were in there. And the identification with Tim Matheson and I, kind of bonding, how that character was done. And so it's amazing. When I look at it now and listen to the Terry Palmieri score, it's like, I think I should have this played at my funeral. I love this score. It's really heartfelt. It's it just kind of all worked out. But it wasn't so much, the Stephen King name. This is just like, God, I wish we could do this as a feature, which it was overseas. But, I didn't think there was going to be any future of it, because Dino said, would you be interested in doing any, sequels? And I said, no, that's okay. Just, pay me double and that'll be it. And of course, there was 2 more sequels that happened.
Yeah. Well, one thing I really loved that, when I was younger, listen, we're going to get into Friday the 13th, but I want to talk about Friday the 13th, the series, which you directed about 4 or 5 episodes of.
Yeah. And I was also the LA story editor on that as well.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. So that was such a great show, and I know it threw a lot of people off because it was called Friday the 13th and it was so different. Yeah. But, and it was very new, I think, for a lot of people for a supernatural show of that time, like investigators, like X-Files was nowhere to be seen yet, and that was a big one. Mm-hmm. Do you have any special, memories or stories that come out of that show, like prepping it, and so?
Yeah, there's a few things. There's a really good book that came out on it, and Lisa, I'm doing great on the names today. Again, I've got to look it up to remember, but she really did a very expansive series of interviews and researching all the things. So if you're a fan, that's a really great book. But from my standpoint, Frank wanted me to do the, part 7 of Friday the 13th. And I just basically said I didn't have any really good ideas, and I didn't want to, kind of jump in and, redo what I just did. So then short time later, he came back with this, well, we're going to do a Friday the 13th series. And I went, how are you going to do that with Jason? He goes, no, it's not going to be Jason. It's going to be actually this antique place that collects all of these, cursed objects. And you've got 3 people that have to go out and bring them back in. I said, well, that could be an interesting premise. So every week it's a different cursed object. And somebody that has it and stuff. So, it sounded like, a good way to do all kinds of stuff, myths and legends and just, complete unusual ideas. Like the one thing I directed, Master of Disguise, was John Wilkes Booth's makeup case that was cursed. So the actor had to kill somebody, sop up their blood with the makeup sponge, pour it on the case, and then it would open, and they could, he could make himself look like Timothy Dalton, James Bond at that time. So, I just thought that was such a great, out there idea. The tough thing was, we were shooting in Toronto before there really was an industry other than Canadian shows. So, we got these, very good, young up and coming, film crew guys, but they worked them to death. I mean, it's like each week another director would come up, and these guys were just burnt out from the last.
Yeah.
Guy, it's kind of the classic Canadian thing that, they just they just do it, and one of the funniest things I ever saw in my life was that I was shooting and the boom operator had the boom up and he was literally out, passed out with his head down. And as the actors moved, he just moved the boom around like he was, working with the force or something. And I thought, that's incredible. And sound mixer came over and are you up? Yeah. Huh? What? Yeah. I thought, that's that's a skill.
That show was definitely a precursor to Charmed and Buffy. Like I can see moments that inspired those two shows.
Yeah, they were doing War of the Worlds up there too at the same time, which was another. I don't know if that has a fan base still. Does it? The War of the Worlds.
Yeah, I would say it's probably more of a cult fan base, but yeah, I would definitely say there's a good sizable amount of people.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm really interested in you've been an actor. Well, I mean, you still act, but yeah, you as an actor, you producer, you writer, and especially a director. How did you go from acting into directing? Like, where did it really fall for you? And you're like, this is something I really want to pursue.
The kind of simple answer is that it always was directing, and that's having a father who went to USC Film School, graduated like in 1949, hoping to get into the industry with his 16 millimeter camera and his knowledge of, the classic films at that time. And nobody would hire him. It's like film school, what the hell are you talking? You get in here because you got a relative, or, you're banging somebody and, you get a job and it was all that kind of stuff. So he basically took a job in a paint store where he met my mother. Within about a half a year or so, she was pregnant with me. He moved to Culver City. So the whole backlot of MGM studios was my playground. And he kind of lived vicariously through me. Here's an 8 millimeter camera, just don't get caught. So on the weekends, me and my friends would, climb under the fence, or if it was another part of the lot, climb over the fence, and we'd shoot in these huge sets, and of course, our shit looked like nothing, but these sets, it looked like, we really, had some money or something. And, all funky little 8 millimeter stuff that you had to send it away to Kodak. And then sometimes part of it would come back. Usually, if something was missing, one of the reels. So the movies never really all came together. It was just like a series of sections of movies. But that's what I wanted to do. And one of the things that I did back in those days is I saw a director's chair, and it just said director on the back. And so I grabbed it. And when we went out, took it with me. And I didn't know who the director was on the back till years later. I literally have the chair sitting right next to me here, John Sturgis. And Magnificent Seven was like one of my favorite, movies. When I had no idea this was the same guy who I still have his chair after all these years. But that really kind of was what I wanted to do, make movies. And then rock and roll happened, come 62, 63. And suddenly it's like, nope, girls are screaming. I got kicked out of 7 high schools for long hair. This was what I was going to do. Going to be the Hollywood version of Mick Jagger. And, that was it. So I got completely away from it. Then that led me into studying mime because I wanted to be a little more of a visual performer and be different from all the heroes that I had, James Brown and Roger Daltrey and of course Mick Jagger. And I thought that's what was going to happen when I came back to the States, but it was just the opposite. I was on a street corner performing, making whatever I made for dinner that night. And that led to me meeting Woody Allen to work with him on Sleeper. Then that led to, Prophecy. And, I started using the mime training to get into all these films and getting my film education by working on sets. So I was, basically getting, paid to hang around and ask questions. So, little by little, once writing One Dark Night, that was, finally, which was 1980, I was finally able to, get that going. But it was from leaving Paris in 71 to 80, there was a big gap of, paying dues and doing whatever you could.
One of your parents did mime too, correct?
My dad was thrilled when I was doing movies and also doing magic because he was also a magician. once I started to marry to the Beatles and the long hair and getting kicked out of high schools, no, we just, I mean, that was it. And once I started to get back into movies again, then we were bonded like, nobody. And one of the things that some of the fans know, Friday the 13th, that the whole scene where Jason's head is being chopped up with the propeller was in my parents' pool, because we couldn't do it at USC where we did most of it, and obviously not on the lake because we do all that kind of stuff. But, I said, well, Dad, this is going to be parts and crap that's going to get in your filter. That's fine. You're making a movie. And he was out there with a little Instagram, Instamatic camera shooting. And he was just so thrilled that there was, a movie that his son was making in his backyard. So, that was a strange bonding. And the only other time I met somebody that had a similar childhood into becoming somebody was Eddie Van Halen. And Eddie and I were friends for, God, I don't know, 5 years or so. I mean, Christmases together, Halloweens together, all of that, got very close to their family, mainly because I was making movies with Valerie Bertinelli. And so, my family and their family just kind of became one. And, Wolfie and my daughter, were sort of boyfriend, girlfriend. She got her first kiss from Wolfie. But Eddie had the exact same thing where, when I said this to him, he went, that's exactly like my dad and I. He wanted to be this musician, and I was the one that carried the torch. And somehow that kind of bonded us in a strange way.
That's awesome.
It is kind of an unusual thing.
Well, sorry for your loss. I mean, he was a musical icon.
Oh, yeah. It really laid me out for a couple of days, because I wasn't like a Van Halen fan. So when I was meeting him, I wasn't like in love with the band going, holy shit. I was a filmmaker, and their band came in kind of after I left rock and roll in '69. So, I knew they were great. I loved their music and stuff. But until you start to get, close to somebody and go to the concerts in the limousine with them and stand backstage and, suddenly you go, holy shit, this guy's legendary and such an amazing person. I mean, really the sweetest guy. So, yeah, his death, I knew he was sick, but I didn't know he was that sick. And so, that really came like a, freight train hitting me.
I'm sorry for that. Jason, I don't know how to ask this, because you've worked with two horror icons. You've directed two horror icons. And I got to know which one's your favorite. I mean, I think I know where it's going to go. But you worked with Freddy in an episode of Freddy's Nightmares, and you worked with, of course, Jason in the best, and I'm saying it now, hands down best episode of the franchise. Wow.
I take that as a huge compliment from you. That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I just rewatched it prior to the interview because I just used the interview as an excuse to rewatch it. And I'm like, man, I wish this guy had made the next one. But you said you didn't have a great idea for it. But I would have loved to see you continue with the franchise, because horror has never really had, exception of Wes Craven and Scream, has never had somebody who just sticks around for more than one or two movies, especially Freddy and Jason.
Yeah. Well, either they don't want to because they're really not in love with the genre, or in my case, truly, I put everything I could think of into that at that time, and then said, well, if you haven't come up with something, what about Freddy and Jason? And I went, how are you going to do that? You're Paramount, their new line. He goes, well, I'm working on it. And then he came back about a week later and said, nope, they're not going to let that happen. And he got any other ideas? And I said, well, you guys have Cheech and Chong, right? Yeah, why? And I said, Cheech and Chong meet Jason, just like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. He goes, no, it's not the same audience. I said, wait a minute. If all these people smoke the same weed, they're going to go in, they're going to laugh, and they're also going to, love the gore, and I think it's going to attract, certain people, and they're not going to be happy with the Jason movie. And so we let it go. But if he had said yes, that would have happened. I would have done that.
That would have made my day. That would probably be my favorite horror crossover of all time. But let's get into it. How did you get the role for Friday the 13th 6?
Well, it was one of those things where when I would go out with my script for One Dark Night, a lot of rejection purely because it wasn't a slasher movie. those were so big, during that time period that, you would have a producer go, well, this is, interesting and stuff, and kind of, Edgar Allan Poe kind of stuff like Roger Corman used to do. But, if you could get someplace in a forest, a huge building, something where teenagers are, and some guy in a mask, I don't care what kind of mask, and something that covers his face till the end, and, then we could talk about making a movie. And that's just not who I am or what I want to do. There's just, to me, no, the kind of fear that I loved was that supernatural kinds of stuff. And part of that was because I went down into the catacombs when I was in Paris, and I felt that weird thing of having bones and skulls on all sides of you, and you had a candle and you walked through, and I went, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I got to do something with the way I felt. And that's what One Dark Night was that idea of somebody being trapped now in the mausoleum, and the crypts opening up and the coffins coming out, and, sort of a fun thrill ride, down that path of horror. So when the Friday the 13th offer came, I was getting very close to making Date with an Angel, with romantic fantasy, and my agent just said, well, take the meeting. They're going to make this movie. And I said, I want to do comedy. And he goes, well, talk to him about that. So I met with Frank. He said, look, I've got one request. Bring back Jason. I don't care how you do it. We fucked up on part 5. People were really pissed that it wasn't Jason at the end of the day. And the idea that maybe Tommy Jarvis is going to be the next Jason, they didn't like it. So figure out some way to bring him back. And I went, okay, Frankenstein. I mean, to me, that's the go-to way to bring somebody to life. It's lightning. So I took that. I went to what's now the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and wrote this treatment rather quickly. And all that sort of stuff kind of came in. I wanted the characters to be likable. I wanted to put real kids in it. I wanted Jason to have an agenda, which is getting back at the asshole that brought him, back to life. And Tommy also having an agenda, trying to get people to, realize that Jason was back. So it had a little more of a story arc, and, a scene where the mythology could be talked about one more time in a sort of laughy way. And those elements, I thought, well, either the fans are going to hate it or they're going to go for it. I wasn't sure. So I had carte blanche on that, which I don't know if I ever, would be able to get that again. I don't know if anybody could get that again. There's so many committees, involved now with making anything. But Frank trusted me. He was amazing, and supportive. And there was, I think, the only thing that he actually had me take out of the script was I was going to introduce Jason's father in that at the end. And he said, if people think that the next movie is going to be about Jason's dad, we're in trouble. So take that out and just let it go with Jason's down there and his eyes, staring, which was the other piece of that I was planning on shooting anyway. So that kind of is, how that whole thing came together. And once that happened, it was, I was getting a lot of doing sequels. New Line called me in to do Nightmare 4, I guess it was. And I said, oh, okay, I'd love Freddy. That would be great. And when do you start shooting? Oh, we're already shooting. What do you mean you're already shooting? It's like, yeah, we got 2 units already going, on effects. And I said, I can't be a director and come in and other things have already been done. The decisions are made and things. I'm sorry, I kind of come from that old school that it's, even if it's not my script, I got to filter it through me. So I know everything there is to know and every question I can answer and stuff. And they go, well, we need somebody who's willing to come in and just, go with it, which ended up being Rennie Harlan. And, bad business decision on my part because, Rennie did incredibly well on part 4. But I sort of went, I was always trying to hold on to something where, you had that control. And I just got spoiled really big time, with Jason Lives. And then Dino De Laurentiis, I met him at a party. Frank Mancuso Sr. and Jr. went, this kid. And Dino came over and he says, are you going to give me a horror movie, Tom? And I said, no, but I got a great romantic fantasy comedy. So I, got him to go ahead with Date with an Angel. So I kind of moved from one film to the other within a period of a year. And then Dino had, sometimes they come back. So obviously, that was the next thing in line.
Oh, that's awesome. So for with doing that though, like obviously you put together this movie and Friday the 13th, and it was just still to this day, like it's the formula of that movie. I think a lot of people try to mimic. Like you had the right amount of camp, comedy, horror. It all felt really, like real. Because you added the children in there and they had never been in there before. Mm-hmm. How did it stand out to you when you were, having seen the first 5 movies and knowing like what they wanted with Jason, knowing that you were taking it more into what would become iconic mm-hmm. as the Frankenstein version. But like, what made you add these elements to make it, did you think like, all right, this is the way it needs to be to kind of refresh it?
Yeah, I think there was 2 things. One, the original Friday the 13th, with the mom, and just the fact that it was so much more gory and graphic than Halloween was, certainly lend itself to that. Wow, we haven't seen this before. And everybody, ran to see that movie, and obviously it did well enough. It's like, okay, we got to do a sequel. What are we going to do? The little boy? No, we can't do that. We got to keep the girl, Alice, her name, right? Alice. And then they came up with the guy in the forest with the Elephant Man bag over his head and said, okay, we'll do this. The timeline completely off, but everybody's got a theory about that. And so then it was just sort of, to me, kind of revamping those same kind of rules in different ways. Personally, part 4 was my favorite. I thought Joe Zito did a great job of saying, okay, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to, the acting was better. There were so many elements to it that I thought was great. And in part 5, I could see, obviously, the problem of it not being Jason at the end of the day, but it was just, it felt a little slimier somehow and grittier. And that, that said, and God rest his soul, he's no longer with us, Danny Steinman. But one night they were showing all the Friday the 13th, and I was coming out of, my part 6 with, kind of having done Q&A and stuff. And Quentin Tarantino, who I knew from the Masters of Horror, was going in, and I'm going, are you going to see part 5? He goes, yeah, it's the best one. I mean, no offense. I love yours. It's great. It's great. But part 5 is a fucking Friday the 13th. It's raw, and it's, it's everything one of these, grindhouse kind of movies should be. I went, okay, fair enough. So, and then after that, as you know, it became, Carrie, and he went to outer space, and he went to hell, and he, Manhattan and stuff, and they were just fishing around trying to find some other place to put him. But when I did mine, I thought, for sure, I want to go back to the camp. I want to change the name because I thought logically, if you're going to sell vacation homes in and around Crystal Lake, it can't be Crystal Lake. There's too many memories. So, it was already me trying to say, all right, if I'm going to stay there, can I still do the kills, but make the people likable? And a lot of the success I feel on my Friday was I had a really great cast, and we are still friends. I mean, fucking all of us, almost 35 years later, Facebook messages back and forth, the conventions, calling up, I'm going to buy a TV. What do you think about this one? I mean, we bonded from that freaking time in the forest and have remained, very close friends since, which is unheard of with making movies. It's like, well, we'll stay in touch, and you never do.
That's great.
But that was great. So then, as the years went on, and so many people were saying, why didn't you do a sequel? And I said, I just didn't have an idea. I still don't have an idea. Finally, I got an idea, like just a little under 2 years ago, which is Jason Never Dies. And I started to combine a couple of ideas, setting it in the winter, but actually setting it on Thanksgiving, so that there was sort of a holiday, supposed to be a happy time, not happening, bringing in basically an all-female cast, not because it's the politically correct thing to do, but it's Catholic girls who are badass. They have to go to this basically retreat with this very nasty nun. So that's sort of the conflict initially was between them and her. And then, of course, when Jason comes back, that becomes, the people he's got to fight. And these girls are badass. So, I tried to create a lot of sequences that were different from before, a little bit of kickback from my Jason Lives that's going to tie it together in a way that I think at least fans are going to find cool. And then it was just a question of, all right, I got to get it out there. And Sean and Victor are still battling it out. In, 9 years now with the rights. So you can't make it. The fans are making their own versions of stuff, which I think is terrific, that they raise the money and then they do it,
Yeah, it just released on Halloween. Voorhees. It was the film he did. It was. I know you guys have talked and you've been on it and connected. Cody did a great job with that.
He did. He did. Yeah. All of these things. Obviously, I was involved with Vengeance. They called me and said, "Can we do a story of Jason's father? Would you be upset if we did?" I said, "No, do it. I'd love to see it." And then so C.J. Graham's going to actually play his father. I went, "That's cool. That's a great idea." And then could you be in the first scene and be the old caretaker, with him? I would love that. So, up I went. And they were all, they had some idea what they were doing, but there was a lot of making it up as they went along to get things, all the stuff they wanted. And if you've seen that, it is triple X in terms of the gore factor and how many kills are in it and stuff. It just went whole hog. And now they're doing a sequel to that, of which I'm returning to that film as well. I just love these guys who are doing this, and some of them are really good, and some of them are like, okay, they're trying, but some that really you can see talent in there, and this is a great calling card for them, getting movies later. It's like, oh, here, take a look at this. This is what I did with, $50,000.
I really like. I saw Never Hike Alone is the one that I've seen, and I thought that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really good. And then at the end, Tommy Jarvis, played by Tom Matthews, shows up again, and I geeked out. I'm like, yes,
yeah,
they should have brought Tommy back for Freddy vs. Jason, and it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. Vincent, who wrote and directed, and that was his whole baby, found me, asked me to come to a screening. I ran into all these makeup effects people, all these other people, and they go, "Have you seen this yet?" And I said, "No." "You're gonna shit, man. You're gonna wait till you see what's happening in this." And of course, he had a number of small homages to Jason Lives in there, not major. But then when Tom Matthews showed up, I was like, "Holy shit! Wow, that's great."
He was a paramedic. I like that twist.
Yeah.
Great. And that's you gotta. That's such a testament to how great your movie is too. Because again, like I see a lot of these fan films come out, and in some way, shape, or form, they are tied to Part 6. Yeah. And that. Thank you for that. You gave us such a great movie, for sure. And also, I want to just say I thought you did an amazing job on the TV movie about the DC sniper.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was because I lived around the area at that time, and I live here again now. I'm in Winchester, Virginia, but like that was such a big thing for us.
Oh God, yeah, it was terrifying for every place. I mean, they were scared in Paris and in London, and you see the news footage, all the stuff. When I was researching, I went, this guy whose only agenda initially was to kill a few people around his ex-wife, and then when she dies, she's just one of the many that got killed in that area. Right. And it took off. When somebody saw a white van and somehow associate that with terrorism, and now he started like, okay, we're going to, up our game here. And it was the way I approached it was a father and son story. Him and Malvo, he had this kid trained, and he had this kid, like, he would feed him when he did, great shots. And they worked it out so that, Muhammad was on a walkie-talkie and the one in the trunk, and the kid would take aim through a little hole in the back. And when he, when somebody was lined up, he says, got him, okay. And then I had him, add, something about Allah, praise to Allah, something, and bang. And this kid was an amazing shot. The fact that, he nailed so many people, and he was like, what, 17, 16? I don't know.
It's
I saw drawings that he did while he was in prison, and he was really a good artist. I mean, he just like a graphic artist, really creative, and obviously never going to get that chance. He just hooked up with this guy, and the rest is, serial killer history.
For sure. I mean, but you could tell you did such a great amount of research for that. So that just wanted to mention that. I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. A lot of the TV movies, it was like in the 80s, I had Freddy, and I had Jason, and I had Stephen King, into the early 90s and stuff. So basically all the sort of iconic horror people I felt I had done. But then when I got into television stuff and cable stuff, it was global warming, it was abuse, it was alcoholism and mental illness, and serial killers, and I mean all these like real monsters. I mean, people that did shit that you go, how do they sleep at night? And you find out very well, because the psychopath has no conscience about that. In fact, worse, he feels he's doing the world a service by getting rid of this this piece of scum, or making his agenda clear of whatever his message is. So talking to people on death row, when you're doing the research and things, it was very chilling to get involved in that world. And the movies would play on a Sunday night and gone, and maybe some of them show up on DVD, but just kind of disappear like early Silence. They just made them for entertainment's sake and then kind of dumped them.
Yeah, there's so much that it's sad. It's sad to think about sometimes, because I think back on stuff and I'm like, can I find that?
Yeah.
It took me forever to find. Sometimes they come back.
Really?
I had to hunt for it.
And now that's one that like people know.
I mean, it's readily available now, but when it first came out on DVD.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. And I was so happy that Sony, MGM, actually did the Blu-ray version, and they actually called me and actually asked me to come in and check the color and the sound and everything. So most times these guys don't do anything like that. So that what survives is this shitty version of the movie that has nothing to do with what me and the DP were trying to do initially.
Did you say Blu-ray? There's a Blu-ray release of Sometimes They Come Back?
Is it? I could be wrong, because I confuse when things come out, like all the Fridays, some of them were on Blu-ray, some not. Now they're all on Blu-ray on that big box set. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't actually.
No, it did.
No, you're right. It did.
I need to buy that.
If I could, as I said, I could be totally wrong. I just remember the cover was blue, and the guys are on there, and I thought it said Blu-ray, but maybe it just said special edition, some shit.
It's on Amazon now.
That's awesome. Well, you're gonna get some residuals from me, because I will be purchasing that this week.
Oh yeah, I'm glad it's on Blu-ray. I still have the VHS. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks so much better on DVD, and good TVs and proper. I think the first version too was not widescreen. They copied the television version. The sides were cut off.
Yeah. Well, I have one more question. Is there any other horror icon character that you would have loved to have a chance to direct?
Well, you want to know how stupid I am? I received a script called Scary Movie by Kevin Williamson, and I read it, and I went, it's opening scene. I sort of made this movie, didn't I? And I mean, it's great, but I don't want to kind of follow the same pattern that I did before. So I let it go. And basically, I read all these other scripts and nothing was any good. At least that was a good script, and I just had to get over myself. Called the agent back. It's like, nope, too late. Wes Craven just grabbed it.
Oh.
And of course, it would have been great to be part of that franchise as Wes was. I thought, that was that same thing I was trying to do. And then years later, I had a meeting. I got to be honest with you. If it wasn't for your Jason Lives, I probably wouldn't have written Scream the way it was. And I went, are you kidding? Oh, thank you. But you want to hear what a jerk I was? And then, relate the story about passing on it. But it did kind of have that impact. And it wasn't like people hadn't done, funny horror things before. But somehow, I guess, because it was a franchise and he was such an icon and there was a particular style that was established over 5 films, I think breaking out of that, helped. And because I had a comedy background, I could try to monitor it so it wouldn't be silly comedy. There'd be, just like the opening with the James Bond thing. If you laugh at that, it's like, okay, welcome to what this movie's going to be like. So I tried to put stuff in that made it, somehow cool to the people who were horror fans. And I didn't want to celebrate great gory effects, but I wanted them to be supernatural kinds of kill. Punching out a heart, twisting the head all the way around, pulling it off. I mean, totally unimitatable kills. And that to me also was important for me, that it wasn't just jab a chicken with a knife and cut her open and then walk away. To me, there wasn't a lot of great classic horror aspects to that. That kind of shit goes on way too much in our lives.
I like the subtle look Jason gives when he rips the guy's arm off that's holding the machete.
Yeah. Yeah, CJ did a great job. Ex-Army, anything I told him to do, yes, sir. And he did it. I mean, he executed things exactly in that kind of Terminator style, which I like better than the kind of loping, kind of Jason, which is great on its own. But once you get hit with a lightning bolt and you're unkillable, there's got to be something that looks a little not quite 100% human, about him.
Very true.
But, Kane Hodder came in after that, and I love his Jason too, with the breathing that he does, and time it takes it in yet another direction.
Yeah. I'm happy for all that we have, but it would have been cool to see what you would have done with it. Going forward, I thought the Jason's father idea was amazing. Yeah,
it would have been, as I said, kind of a different departure, but I so understood why Frank was concerned about not putting that out there when people were already. I mean, it hurt our box office considerably when we first opened. There was a lot of old school fans that going, I'm not going to see this. I know what it's going to be, and it hurt, and it didn't help that it was the second week of Cameron's Aliens, that was going on. So people saw that the first week, and it's like, fuck it, let's go see Aliens 2 again. So
Oh yeah.
So we were number 2 instead of number 1, and of course, that was sort of a first that happened, and it was kind of a repercussion. But as the years have gone on, it's amazing to me. It has become, so much of a fan favorite, and everybody has their different reasons, and they, call mine, anything past that is zombie Jason, and anything before that is, actually human Jason. I don't know how human Jason did some of the things he did, and I never intended him to be a zombie. To me, it was the Frankenstein rule: dead body, lightning, boom. You're reanimated, and that's that. He's not doing any of the George Romero zombie things, but they'll come back and say there's other kinds of zombies, and argue that, and I go, all right, you win. Okay, he's a zombie.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad CJ connected us, because this has been a lot of fun. You've worked with some of my favorite people, and again, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Oh, my pleasure. And CJ is as great as he comes off to everybody. I mean, knowing him so long, he's just got a heart of gold and very funny. And I definitely, I wrote this sequel to my Jason Lives totally with him in mind to do it, and with his style, and tried to put a couple of things that are a little different, on Jason, but totally logical, totally like, okay, that would make sense why that would happen. And, talked quite a bit to CJ about it. So we're all waiting to see if it can be done, if that can happen.
No, I hope it is. And where can everybody find you on social media?
Well, there's a couple places. Obviously, Facebook. I'm, Tommy McLoughlin on there. There's a TommyMcLoughlin.com. I've got a band, The Sloss. So the Sloss.org. There's all the crazy shit I've been doing for the last 10 years on stage, and with the album called Back from the Grave. Everything has got some sort of edge that's kind of in the horror vein a bit. And so that, you can certainly look up our stuff, or just go on YouTube and put The Sloss Band, and you see my crazy ass out there going like, how old is he? So it was another creative escape and getting a chance to do what I did at 16, in my 60s. So it always great.
That's awesome.
Right.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's been
and
wonderful.
Check out everybody. Check out the scenesnobs.com. Check out 3geeks.ninja. And for everybody else, have a great night.
Take care.